Well, welcome to another edition of Rimshots with Sean, brought to you by Barstools and Bandtalk. It's always fun to talk to people from the States. You know, you got to negotiate the time differences. My good friend Raquel out in the West Coast hooked me up with, this is Annie Davis from the band Trashy Annie. And I saw some of your press stuff, and I'm just going to read a little bit. Rising star, award-winning songwriter, and force of nature, Annie Davis is a genre blending mix of Joan Jett, Miranda Lambert, Taylor Swift, and the Go-Go's. That's quite a, I guess, melting pot of material.
Those are some big names in there. That's pretty great.
Did you see that? Did you see that? Have you seen that press yet?
I saw that go through in some kind of description for a gig that we were doing. I think the City Winery gig had some of that verbiage on their website. So yeah, I did see that. It's pretty cool.
Okay. So what do you think about that when you're seeing it? I mean, you know, there's some heavy hitters on that list, and throw them all in the blender, and I guess she's saying that's what you guys are.
Well, that's amazing. I would love to think that we are. Yeah, I think the music is rock and roll at its roots. I'm a child of the 80s, and so I love 70s and 80s rock and roll, and I miss the way that that scene used to look. And so I think we have a lot of that going on in our music, and that's probably where some of that comes from.
Well, so elaborate now, because you mentioned before we started the backstory of the band is very interesting. But elaborate on the '80s, because oftentimes when I interview people that came up and had success in that genre, and they're still going, I always ask them, why do you think that music seems to be more popular now than it's ever been? What would you say?
Do you think it's more popular now than it's ever been?
I do. You're seeing all these Monsters of Rock cruises. You're seeing these guys. I'm friends with a lot of guys that came up in the 80s, like a friend of mine, Sean Duncan from LA Guns, are doing tours with, Buck Cherry and different sorts of folks like that. A lot of them are doing fly-out dates, so they'll go out Thursday, they're back Sunday, and they're home for the front of the week, and everything just seems to always be sold out. It obviously isn't the level that it was in terms of touring and whatnot, but it just seems like that music is so just as popular, if not more popular than it was.
I mean, that makes me so very happy. What I've noticed is that in our scene anyway, we're sort of being inundated with tribute bands and cover bands. And so it is a lot of that era when you're talking about tribute bands and cover groups. So to that extent, yeah, that music is still alive and kicking. I don't know that there's a lot of new music coming into the world that still has that same kind of flavor to it, which I miss. And so I think we're trying to do our part to keep rock and roll alive, because I sure would like to see it for a very, very long time.
You know, it's a great point that you bring up, because a week or so ago I was on a show. It was a benefit show for somebody, and there was these young guys there was the first band, my band was the last band. There was these young guys in the middle, and they were a throwback. Like, it was just like one part's up on one part. I can't even describe it. And I was just like, oh my God, there's hope. There's hope that, this thing's going to keep going. And they were just really, really good and really, really committed. It was fun to watch.
That makes me super happy, because, yeah, I think there's a need for that stuff. And it's not just the old rocker people like us. There's also younger people who want that too. And the digital stuff and the electronica and all that certainly has its place, and it's cool. But I just miss old sweaty ass rock and roll, hard hitting drums and cool licks and hooks and all the things. So
Amen.
Yeah.
So just before we started, you said the backstory of the band is very interesting. And I guess first off, introduce the members of your band, who they are, what they play, and then just kind of tell us your story.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting. It's my story, so I guess I'm a little biased, but it's the bandmates that I currently have in this current iteration. I have a lead guitar player named Blake Jurison, who's amazing, a Berkeley guy, and he's incredible. And then I have a bass player named Miles Barker, also amazing. My current drummer is Ryan Smith, and then I usually rotate through a couple of other guys. We usually play as a 5-piece, sometimes a 6-piece, and throw in a fiddle, which is cool to have a fiddle in a rock band. But then I've got a couple of other guys, Amir Nubach and Dallas Dillard, who kind of rotate in and out to be that fifth piece of the band. So that's my current iteration. I started it. It's my baby, and I write everything. I manage the band and do all of the fun stuff as well. But the backstory is that I was a trumpet player in college, and then got out of music for a long time, 20 years plus. And then during COVID, decided to buy a drum kit because that's what I'd always really wanted to play. And so started learning drums, and then bought a guitar and decided that I wanted to write a song just to kind of go and do it one time, sort of overcome this fear of singing in front of people that had been a lifelong issue for me. I'd never done karaoke. I'd never done any of it because I was terrified of the idea. So I was like, I'm going to conquer this thing. So I wrote a song, and I wrote it all with just one chord because that's all I could play at the time. Yeah. And I went out to an open mic in Austin, Texas, and I played my little tune and fell in love with songwriting. And I thought, well, if I love songwriting this much, I have to learn how to sing and do the thing. And so spent the next couple of years putting together the band, learning how to play rock and roll, how to write rock and roll. Because when you start out, you're kind of singer-songwriter. If it's just you and a guitar, it just tends to be like that. So anyway, put the band together, started doing the thing, got picked up by a label out of California, a pretty good-sized label called Cleopatra Records, and ended up winning to the 2023 CMA of Texas Americana Artist of the Year, which was cool because we definitely have a little bit of a country thing in the mix with the music as well. And so it's been a cool couple of years. It's been sort of whirlwind and surreal. We tour all over now. We just got back from a tour out east. We probably tour every other month or so, and are doing the thing. But the backstory behind the name, so that's kind of where the band, how it came to fruition. But the backstory behind the name is that I released so I'm 48. So I got into this when I was about 44. And my first song that I released was that one chord tune, and it was called Runnin'. And I was super proud of it. I think it came out really cool for a one chord song, just in general, but especially for a one chord song. So I did a little music video for it and had released it under Annie Davis, my name. And this woman got on there, and after all of this, blood, sweat, and tears going into learning so much about the music industry and, how to write a song, and put all these fears out there on the table for all the world to, thumbs up or thumbs down. You know how it is. Anyway, got the song out there, did a little music video that I did myself because it was full-fledged COVID at the time, did it on my iPhone, did the whole thing. So put it out on YouTube, super proud of myself. And this lady gets on there. The very first thing that I see is a comment talking about how my clothes are too young for me and I shouldn't be wearing such things at this age. And so I was heartbroken for about 10 minutes. And then I decided, screw this lady. We should be what we want and do what we want. I don't care what age we are. And so that's why I ended up naming the band Trashy Annie. And here we are. And it's been a great run, and we're excited about things to come.
So the story's cool. I would never ask you your age, but I mean, I was kind of guessing based upon, some of the musical references we were punting back and forth. I think it's very interesting because you literally started from scratch. I mean, let's call it what it is. There's not a huge call for trumpet players in rock, right?
Correct.
So to get out of it 20 years and then basically start again 4 years ago and to have that success, and let's call it what it is. The world's cruel when it comes to, well, especially women. The world is cruel, and they like to put all kinds of different tags and whatever. So to have all that stuff happen is very cool. Did you get, that woman aside, has the support for you guys been good, or are you still seeing some of that nastiness that, I guess would permeate out there?
The first year-ish, there was a lot of hit and miss. There was a lot of support and really, really loyal fans that to this day will follow us anywhere we go. There were some nasty troll people on social media that first year, especially. I haven't had a lot of that lately, but what I did is after I kind of decided to lean into the Trashy Annie thing and not let other people's opinions sway me away from the thing I wanted to do, I started screenshotting all of the mean things that people said to me on social media about the music or me or my clothes or anything else. And I just released my first album this last May under Cleopatra, and the back album art is all the screenshots of the mean things people have said.
Very
and
creative.
The album is called Sticks and Stones, and the front album art is a big old glittery middle finger. So that's how I've decided to deal with that.
Because again, with the social media thing, and I deal with it all the time because I have a big group and I have the podcast and I play and it's real easy for people to take shots and sometimes it bugs you, but I kind of have a rule of thumb. My rule of thumb is if I'm going out to see a band play, whether I like them or not, and there's somebody in the other room that might overhear me and laugh at this, but I try to keep my opinions to myself because I'm not on stage, right? And I would, I guess, expect the same thing. And unfortunately, you sometimes get that till somebody gets home and then they start typing and they have a lot to say. So I guess it's got to be cool to be able to use that artwork, and people probably see it and know who the heck they are and go like, "Uh-oh," right?
Yep. And I had to ask my lawyer if it was okay. And he said, abso-freaking-lutely. If they put that on a public wall, you go ahead and put that right out in the world as you see fit. So it's been great. And honestly, there's been, ratio wise, the
Yep.
number of people that have said mean things is so small compared to the people that are so supportive and love what we're doing and love the music and love the band and put us up in their houses when we tour through and feed us and take care of us and come to the shows and bring 20 friends. We have the best fans. I'm just so pleased with the way that this is all going. And I love this life. I love music and I love being back in it. I wrote poetry as a kid. I was super introverted and nerdy and all that. And so as a trumpet player and poetry writer, I wasn't the life of the party. I wasn't dating anybody. I didn't do any of that. And so when I got back into music, sort of all that childhood stuff kind of came flooding back in a good way.
Yep.
I had a lot to write about, and there was a lot I had learned over the last, 20, 25 years that gave me a lot of stuff to write about. And so I think it's all, it all happened at the time it was supposed to happen. And I'm super pleased with all of it.
So let's call it what it is. I mean, like if we're to break the story down, I guess in its most rawest form, you've been a playing songwriting musician for 4 years ish.
Yeah.
You have a record deal, you're touring, and you're a woman. So some people sometimes have that silly whatever associated with that. Do you get some backlash for that? Like, you go into a town and somebody hears a story maybe, and they're the guys that have, struggled their whole lives and never got anywhere. Like, do you face any backlash on that end for that reason, or are people supportive?
For the most part, people have been really supportive because I think a lot of people want to be able to chase their dreams regardless of age. And I hope that at the end of the day, when I'm lying on my deathbed, I've inspired some people out there to go do the thing, no matter what anybody else says about it. And so for the most part, people have been very supportive, and it's been a really cool thing to feel like, because it is weird, right? It's crazy. It's in my mid 40s now, early late 40s, and I have decided to start a rock band and tour the country with all my bandmates are all 25, 30 years old. They're these little peanuts and they're amazing, and it's a blast. And so I've been pleasantly surprised with how supportive everybody has been with us, with music, with me, all of it, with the story.
So
very cool.
Here's how I can relate.
Hope in humanity.
Yeah. So here's how I can relate. I can relate because, I've been a playing musician since my teens, and I've toured and I've done all that. But when all the stuff started, I was doing a radio show, and I'm like, oh, well, I'll just start interviewing some of my friends. And then the next thing you know, it gets a little bigger, and I've got this big podcast, and I'm getting great folks like yourself. But I do get some of the traditional media people that are like, oh, well, you didn't go to journalism school, or you didn't do this. And it's like, well, it was an accident. And I just decided to keep doing it because it resonated with people. So I can relate to your story. And the reason why I'm asking you that is because sometimes I do get some people that kind of, lucky, or they don't see the amount of work that goes into it, and the fact that, hey, I'm not 25. I turned 54 this year. Happy and proud to say it, right? So, I do understand when people get silly like that.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, it all goes back to this idea that who gives a shit? Let's do what we want to do and what drives us forward. And I want to leave whatever legacy I can on this planet, and squeeze every little bit of juice I can out of this thing before I go. And so I don't really care what people think about it at this point. I might have used to and been worried about how it was going to be received or whether people were going to like this whole thing. But I worry less about that now because I realize so much of it's for me. And for the people that it does resonate with, we're kindred spirits and they get it and I get them, and it's cool. The people that are kind of the haters of the world, I don't really need them anyway, right? I don't want them at shows.
They
We're
don't
cool
buy.
people.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
right.
we're not doing this to hang out with shitheads.
That's right. They don't buy records and they don't stream tunes and they don't do anything but complain. And so you're bang on. A
That's
lot
right.
of the artists that Raquel has represented have come from Cleopatra, and I've been meaning to ask her, but I didn't get around to it. So I'll ask you. They're out of California. Tell me a little bit about this label because everybody that I have talked to talks very highly of them.
Yeah, they're a really cool label. I've only been with them since November of, I don't know, a year and change ago. So a little 6 months or so before the album came out. Uh, but they're great. Brian Pereira has been around. He's the CEO. He's been around the industry forever. I think the story is, if I'm getting this right, that he started out schlepping around Hollywood and California, selling t-shirts, selling CDs as a kid. And then it sort of evolved into a love of that side, the business of music. And he ended up starting a label. And what I like about them is they're very supportive of independent artists. You know,
Mhm.
they're different than the big three, right? And they understand that those of us that are scrappy and we're trying to figure it out all ourselves, that there's just a lot we don't know. And
Yeah.
so I like them. I think they're a cool label, and they really do. They're a little bit they're kind of entrenched in the sort of emo world and goth and kind of that genre. They do a lot in that world, but they've got a big wide spread on their label. So yeah, they're it's a cool indie label. It's a big label for an indie label, but because they've been around since the early '90s. But there's a lot of cool people over there. I like them a lot.
Very
And I
cool.
got tied into them because a friend of mine, Danny B. Harvey, that's here in the Austin area. So he's a guitar player he used to have a band with Lemmy from Motorhead, and
Okay.
it like that whole crew of people. So he's been around the scene a lot. Anyway, so he knew those guys and ended up passing my music on to them. And then that's when they said, yeah, we think she's got something interesting here. So that was kind of how it all came about.
Well, and it's interesting that you bring that up because a big thing that we talk about on this show is the networking aspect and how, people see things and people and think that people just arrive and there's a whole backstory of networking and how you work your network and how you help other people. And the people that do that, tend to succeed and more people should see that. We could go on and on and on and on and on. But it sounds to me like networking was a key component in getting you signed.
It always is. I think in any industry, but particularly in music, I played drums for Danny B. Harvey for a year and just would show up and play for him because he needed a drummer. And we just got to be buddies that way. And then he's like, man, I think your music is really good. I think I know some people who might want to hear it. And that's how things go. And, to your point earlier, people will say, oh, you're lucky that this happened or that happened. But we make our own luck by going out and spreading the net as wide as possible. And to
Yeah.
your point, taking care of the other people in the community selflessly, not because we want to get something out of it, but because that's what we should be doing for each other. And then luck makes itself, right? If you're out there doing the thing and schlepping every day, I mean, I'm up at 6 a.m. every day, writing music, working on the business of this thing, all the things that you need to do. We need to treat this thing like a business as musicians, and a lot of us don't have that in us. I personally like it because in between not playing trumpet anymore and coming back to music, I started a company and I love the business side of things. And so when I got into music, I love the business of music as well. But a lot of musicians don't. And I totally understand it. However, you got to have a little bit of that hat on if you really want to get anywhere with your music. At least that's how I feel about it.
Well, it's the part that's not fun. And my experience has always been that musicians like the fun stuff, but they don't like the not fun stuff. And therefore, a lot of them kind of leave that on the cutting room floor for somebody else to deal with. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying there. Okay, I promised you we were going to do this quick because that's the way good old Raquel likes it. So my fans, and I can have anywhere from 150 to 200,000 people looking at something at any given time. Where are my folks going to find out more about you guys, what you're doing, where you're touring, how your music?
So I have a website, trashyannie.com, just like it sounds. And then all of social media is Trashy Annie, with the exception of Instagram, which is Trashy Annie Music. Everything else is under Trashy Annie. So it's pretty easy to find us out there. And I will plug real quick before we go.
Please.
We've got I'll have an album coming out this year with the same crew that I did the first one with, which is Jeff Lesby Brault and PH Naffa out of Arizona. So we've got a second one that's been through the studio, and we're putting the final touches on it now. So I'm excited about that. But the other thing that's cool is because of Sticks and Stones, that first album, a guy named Tommy Price reached out to me and wanted to write together. And he has been the drummer for Joan Jett for 40 years, played with Billy Idol on Rebel Yell. You know the guy, you're a drummer, you get it.
I know exactly who he is.
Yep, and he is the nicest cat you'll ever meet. And so anyway, he got a hold of my music and said, I want to write with this girl, called me up, and we have an album about half done as well. And so we'll have something coming out this year, and I'm really excited about that because I think it's going to be pretty damn cool.
Well, that's beautiful. And if anybody's, well, a lot of people will be watching this, and again, they're getting tired of me talking about networking, but it makes the world go around. You can't deny, you can try to deny it, but you can't deny it. That's just the way it is. Annie, I really want to thank you for doing this. One of the things that I've had the pleasure of after 4 years of doing this little old podcast based out of Halifax, Nova Scotia. I don't know if you know that or know.
I didn't.
Yeah, so it's we're east coast of Canada. You know, if you look really hard through binoculars, you can see England. I'm only kidding, but I get to meet cool people that are doing cool things, and oftentimes I get to tell people in my own backyard that guess what, there's stuff going on out there. So, you know, if you aren't doing these things, other people are. So get at it. So thank you so much for doing this. I'd love to stay in touch with you and see what goes on, and keep her going.
Man, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thanks for keeping rock and roll alive, man.
Peace. Talk to you soon.
See ya.